Have you ever wished that there was a Google search engine for embarrassing secrets about some of the biggest companies in the world? And tons of smaller ones that you've never heard of and you hopefully never will. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, this is a real thing and we're going to talk about it. Shodan. So Shodan is literally what it says on the front page. You're staring at the front page of Shodan, and it is a search engine for the internet of everything. It has literally got everything on here. It's scary. We're talking about control panels for industrial control systems and databases that should never have even been on the internet, much less been freely accessible to anybody who has, Python open. I mean, they've literally got everything, and they've also got a really cool API and some really forgivable pricing structure and an awesome free API as well. So I'll probably do a whole other video on Shodan and how to use it and how to hunt for cool things. That honestly could be its own series, and it very well might be. But today we're just going to talk about the bare essentials of the Shodan API, how to open it up, how to use it for very, very simple use cases, and hopefully it will be enough for you to kind of expand your knowledge into the world of Shodan. So I don't know why I'm doing my hands like this. It's weird. What do I do with my hands? So if you don't know what an API is, perfectly fine. Totally normal. I've got a whole other video on that, so go check that out. I'll link to it up here somewhere. And it'll also be in the description and, all of that other stuff. I build APIs, I scrape APIs, so I know APIs at least fairly well. There's still stuff that I learn about it every single day, but I know APIs relatively well. I know it well enough to know that Shodan's is awesome. It's very, very easy to use. We'll, pop it open here in a second, and I'll show you, it's very, very simple. So we're going to open up a new file here, and we're obviously going to be writing in Python, because why would you write in any other language ever? Shodan API.py is what we're going to call it, and we are going to, I'll walk you through how to install Shodan first. It's very, very easy. Go to new terminal here. I'm using the PowerShell terminal within VS Code. You could use your own command terminal, and this should be the same command in Linux as it is in Windows, but I'm not entirely sure. So let me maximize this real quick. So let's do pip3, because I'm using Python 3, install Shodan. And it's going to take you a lot longer than it takes me because I've already got it installed. So it's literally that easy to install the API, and it's even easier, well, about as easy, to actually get the API up and running. So we're going to import the API up here. So import Shodan and JSON. And we're going to create our boilerplate main function. So we're just going to import or create the Shodan API instance, and it is the easiest initialization ever. I've got my API key, which you will grab from Shodan's site. I will grab my API key and put it in a text file. I'm not obviously going to open that text file while I'm recording, because why would I ever do that? But I will import it here with a simple file read. So file equals open. It is in the api.txt file. We're going to open it as read, and API key is equal to f.readline, and we're going to strip just to make sure that there's nothing funky in there, and f.close. So, like I said, it is brutally simple to create the Shodan API object. It is literally API equals Shodan.Shodan API key. All you have to know is this API key right here, and you have created your instance. It's even easier to actually go ahead and use the API. So Shodan's API docs are limited, but good. And one of the reasons why it's limited is because basically it gives you access to all of the things that you can access via the search, the actual search bar within Shodan. So if you can search it on Shodan, you can search it within the API. Obviously, within the API, you're getting JSON results back, and they're pretty well formatted from my experience. So you'll get JSON results back through the API, whereas you will get graphical response with the graphical user interface, obviously. So it's got some limitations in the documentation simply because the things that you can do with it are limited by your imagination. So it's very, very simple to get to your API key. You just go to Shodan, log in, and then go to your account page, and it will show your API key there. You can go ahead and dump it in a text file like this that you can read from, and that's just kind of how I've done it. So it's easy to get the free API key. You just have to sign up and request it, and it's like a no-brainer. But obviously with the paid API key, not everybody can afford it, so I'm not going to do like a whole thing just on the paid API right now, at least. I might later on. Okay, so we're going to develop a couple of functions, and I'm breaking these out in functions just because I kind of like developed it that way during testing, and there's like some specific functions that I can find like are useful just right off the bat. So we are just going to do a banner count to kind of show one of the very, very simple things that Shodan can do. So we're going to do Apache banner equal to banner count, and we are going to pass in the API object and a banner Apache. All right, so let's go up and make this function, and let me explain it. Let's reclaim some screen real estate here. Now let's go up and make this function. This function is banner count, and it's going to take in an API object, which is empty by default, and it's going to take in a banner, which is an empty string by default. And it is just dead simple to actually just get, I mean, it's not the most useful piece of data, but it doesn't really have to be. We're just going to kind of showcase one of the things that you can do with this. So basically, the use case for this is I want to see how many servers, I want to see how many nodes on Shodan are on Shodan and have Apache within their banner. And let me give you, I know this wasn't going to be a showcase of what all Shodan can do, but basically it's just a free text search of Apache. So I'm going to run this search real quick, and we see there are almost 27 million results here. And we can see kind of examples right here. This one right here is just an Apache web server. You can see where it's got Apache in the banner. So fairly easy to see that. And the banner is just a response to Shodan's scrapers, essentially. Shodan is constantly scraping the web, trying to find these new servers and update their data. And this was the response that they got when they scraped. So this is going to be an Apache web server in most cases, unless it's kind of spoofing that, which is possible. So now it is as easy as we're going to wrap this all in a try except, just because we will be making an external web request that might go wrong for a variety of reasons. And we're going to say banner search is equal to api.search, and we're going to just pass in banner. That easy. So we're going to print number of results found, and all we care about in the banner count is the number of banners. We don't really care about the results themselves. So this is the worst way that you could do it, and I'm about to show you a better way that you can do it. But this is the worst way that you can do it. Basically, we're going to go into the JSON object that was returned from this, so test search, and we are looking for total. And total is going to have the total number of results. And that is what, oh, this is supposed to be banner search, not test search. I'm thinking about when I did this for testing. So that's really all we need. And if we get something wrong, we're just going to print it out. Exception on banner search for banner. And we're going to print out the exception. And we need exception as E. So this is just going to tell us what went wrong when it does go wrong. And let's go ahead and run this. So this is just going to grab and print out information about the banner Apache. So let's do python./Shodan API.py. It's going to take a bit to run because we are processing a lot of results. So 976. So this is a little over 18 million results. I'm not entirely sure why there's a fairly big difference. I mean, there's like an 8 million difference, or a difference of 8 million between the two. I'm not 100% sure why there is such a big difference. It's the same search. But, even if it's incomplete and you're not getting the exact same results, you can still get some pretty awesome stuff. And this may be, they may be deduping and doing things like that within the API. So I'm not 100% sure why it's like that. But obviously 18 million results, you're probably going to find something fairly interesting within that. So like I said before, this is not the best way to do this. You can actually get much faster results and much cleaner ones if you use, instead of search, API.count. And this is just going to return the number of results that you get. So if we go ahead and run this again, we are going to get 26,898,206. So it looks like probably what we were dealing with, this is just a difference of let's see, 26,897, 26,898. So fairly close to what you get in the GUI, especially the last time we had an 8 million result difference. So I think this count is a little bit closer to what we're getting right here. If we refresh, we might actually get something even closer. Yeah, so this is 26,898,371. So now it's a lot closer. So this count is probably what's being represented right here, whereas before there was probably some deduplication going on and a little bit more filtering and things like that. So if you just want the count of what you're getting, if you say wanted to kind of refine a search as you're using it and try to get as few results as humanly possible, or as many, then the count method is going to be the best way to do that. As you can see, it was much faster and the results are a lot smaller, honestly. All right, so that is our banner count method. It's nothing super interesting with that, but it is a quick and easy kind of method that we can use to gather at least some information about some searches that we might want to run. So we're going to do something similar here, except we're going to be mainly targeting countries. So let's do def country count, and we're going to pass in pretty much the same thing, but this time we're going to be focusing on a country. And we're going to print out, or we're going to get the count first, the exact same way. It's equal to API.count country. And we're going to print the total. Total count for country. And we'll print out which country we're dealing with here. And then print out the count. Count at total. All right, so now we're going to do kind of like a comparison. I'm interested in, let's go ahead and exit out of that, and let's do US count is equal to country count with API and US, and let's compare that to China count. This is not returning anything, so we don't need this. So let's just call it country count, and then country count, API, and CN. And let's compare the two. I'm just kind of interested in how many nodes Shodan picks up in the US versus how many nodes they pick up in China. So let's run it, and we'll get our results. So we've got, looks like, quite a bit more. So we're dealing with 9 million in the US and about 1 million in China. Now, I will say that this is skewed, obviously, with the fact that the US has AWS. They've got, most of the large hosting providers have at least a fairly large presence within the US. So you're going to see some kind of skewed numbers here, but I have found quite a bit of very, very interesting data in China that we will talk about here shortly. That's kind of going to be where we talk about where Shodan is cool and a little bit nefarious in a way. So let's take a look at our next function. So now we've got a very basic function that you might use if you're in any kind of like security role. Let's say that you wanted information about a specific host. So this is actually incredibly easy with Shodan. We're going to go ahead and write out another function that we are going to call, let's give ourselves some room, and let's reclaim some real estate. Let's say def host info and pass in the API as well as the host. And this is a little bit more applicable to what a lot of people will be using. So we're going to be using a different API function called host. So host equals API host, and we're going to pass in host. That's a lot of hosts. So let's print out our basic information about that host that we gather from Shodan. So we'll have our IP. That will be in its own object. And then let's go ahead and make a new line. And let's do our org. Org is kind of if Shodan picks up that it's part of an organization, like a hosting provider or something like that, then it will give that information here. Sometimes you don't get that information, sometimes you do. But when you do, it can be fairly interesting. Same exact thing with the OS. So Shodan does try to get OS information, but sometimes it's not freely available. So let's do OS and that. And now let's start getting that stuff. So host.get, we are going to be searching for OS. And if we don't get an OS, we are going to print out NA. We're pretty much going to just copy paste this into org. And in org, we'll be looking for org. Very simple there. And IP, we'll be looking for IP underscore str. I've never seen a case, and I can't think of a case where you wouldn't have the IP address because you're passing in the IP address. But I guess in some cases it may not happen if you're passing in a domain name or something like that. So let's create an obj equal to empty. Items is also equal to empty. And let's start parsing out information from our JSON. So we're going to do for item and host data. Now you can go ahead and run a query and dump it out to a JSON file and look through that. We're actually going to do that later, and you'll get to see all of this information and what it kind of looks like, what the data format is, all of that fun stuff. So you'll be able to look at it that way. I'm not going to do that here just for the sake of brevity, but basically the information that we're interested in is within data. And we are specifically going to be looking at information about ports. So we're going to do items.append. And this is going to be item port. So that is going to be the actual port number. And we're going to create a dictionary with item data. So that's going to be the information about that port. So basically these are like, key value pairs, and we are creating a list of them that we are going to end up dumping into our object. So obj at host.get IP underscore str. And just in case we don't get that, it's going to be in/a. And we are going to set this equal to an object. That object is going to have items in it. And that's just going to be the list that we created. And I'll show you what this looks like here in a second. I promise it may look like nonsense right now, but it will make sense here in a second. Org is equal to host.get org. And in A, if we can't read that information, well, I can type. And os host.get os. We could have grabbed all of this information up at the top, but I'm lazy and I'm not going to go back up there and fix it. And like I said before, we are going to dump this out to a file so that we can actually look at it. So f equals open, and we're going to call this host example underscore, let's just call this ports, since we're mainly talking about the ports in this example, .json. We are going to write it out, and let's write json.dumps obj. So that's going to just dump it all into the file in a way that we can look at in a formatted manner. So let's close it. So I've already pulled out an example IP address that at least had some verbose information. I don't know that it's necessarily interesting. So let's do port data API 123.59.213.79. And let's go ahead and run this. Well, no, sorry, it's host data, not port data. I think it was host data. What did I name this thing? Host info. Everybody, that's why naming conventions are important. Host info. There we go. So let's do Python, Shodan API, run it, and we see that the org is cloudvsp.inc. I believe that's a hosting provider, and it should have created a JSON file here. So let's open up that JSON file and let's go ahead and format it. Luckily, VS Code has fairly good formatting, but it is an absolute beast of a JSON file. So what we see here are the port numbers. So we've got our port number 8001, and this is the banner that we got with it. So, we might be able to pull out some interesting information here. That's not necessarily the purpose of this particular video, but as you can see, these are all of the ports as well as all of the banners that Shodan grabbed for those ports. So for our last section, we've got something that's near and dear to my heart. We've got grabbing Elastic database indices. So this is something that I think is really, really cool about Shodan in particular, because it will just document everything. Right now, I believe it was about a week from the time that I filmed this video that they started documenting Cobalt Strike servers, which is very, very useful for us who research all things cybersecurity. But one of the things that it does is it documents Elasticsearch indices, which are essentially Elasticsearch tables that you can, kind of read through the very basic information about. If you were to pull this information from these Elasticsearch indices that are often left completely unprotected and passwordless and readable and sometimes writable to the public, and you shouldn't do that because that's probably illegal. But if you were to do that, you could at least get very, very basic information from Shodan before you actually start reading anything, which again, you should not do because it's probably illegal. So let's go ahead and build out some functionality to pull out Elasticsearch indices and start looking at interesting things. So we're going to call this def elastic info. We're going to pass in the API object, and we're going to pass in the host. All right, and we're just going to assume essentially that this is an Elasticsearch database. If that's not the case, you could build in some like error handling and things like that, but I'm lazy, so we're not going to do that. We're going to start off the exact same as before, api.host, pass in host, and we're going to create an empty elastic object. And this is going to be what we start filling out. So we are interested specifically in the first item within the host data. We could go back and look through what that object actually looks like if we wanted to dump this to a file, but I'm just going to tell you to trust me because I've tested this out. We're going to do it this way. So for key, value, and host data, and we're going to pick the object at 0.items. And we're going to try to find the object within this list because it is a list of items. We're going to try to find the object within this list whose key is elastic, because that is the object that's actually going to hold the information about the Elasticsearch indices. So if key is equal to elastic, then our elastic object is going to equal to value. That's all we really care about within that for function. It's fairly zippy because it doesn't have that much information to kind of iterate through, and it's just testing for the key. So it's not super intensive. I've used this on some fairly large Elasticsearch databases. All right, so now we're going to start actually iterating through that Elasticsearch object. So we're going to do for index and value. So for index and value, and elastic obj in the indices object, and we're going to use .items to iterate over it. We're going to say if the val, and I'm going to explain this in a second, total docs and count is greater than 0, we can do print f and we're going to print out the information about the index. And basically what this does is it's only going to show you information about indices that are not empty. You can get some pretty cool information out of like empty indices, like just the name of the index itself might be very interesting, like military underscore secrets underscore data is obviously a fairly interesting like index name. But here we're just going to kind of limit it to non-empty indices, like indices that actually have documents within them. Has count of, so we're going to actually print out that count val, and it is within the total. All this shit gets in my way. Total docs, and we're interested in the count. So now we can run this on a host that I have already found, and we will do like a very, very short period of hunting here in a second, where we actually look for other indexes, and I'll show you kind of how easy it is. So we're going to do it on this IP address. Let me drag and drop it. That's a little bit faster. So let's drag it over here. Elastic info, we're going to pass an API and this string right here. Oop. All right, I guess I will have to type it. 120.25.171.222. All right, so let's run this and we'll get our information very, very quickly. So here are the names of our indexes right here, mk underscore kw underscore question underscore 3. So obviously these are fairly small indices, but if we go down here, we've got wx underscore message underscore 3. Now this doesn't mean anything to me. This was just basically the first example that I found. But if we wanted to find more examples of Elasticsearch databases that are fairly open to the public, it's very, very easy to find these. Like, very, very easy. Like, all you have to type is product Elastic. Press search. You get 26,000 results like right off the bat without really having to do much else. I'm going to go ahead and tell you a lot of the interesting stuff is in China. I've found like lots of very scary looking databases in China. So let's go ahead and look for one that's particularly large. Like this one has 13 gigs of data. Let's see, that's 27.128.241.72. So let's pull that IP out and run a search on that one. And we'll be able to see what all of these indexes actually are. Obviously it's going to format badly because why would it? Why wouldn't it? All right, let's clear our screen out and run this on our new IP. And as we can see, lots of stuff. And this may just not be interesting at all. It may just be some poor dude who left all of his stuff open on the internet and didn't mean to, and it, isn't anything interesting. But it might also be something interesting, and it's something that you can hunt through. So this is already a longer video than I intended it to be, but we've got a lot of really, really cool stuff here. And there's a lot of potential with the Shodan API. It's an awesome API. It's very, very well built and very, very fast. So go and check it out. If you enjoyed this, learned something out of it, blah, 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 definitely leave me a like. Subscribe if you want to see more of it because I will be doing more Shodan stuff. And take it easy.